Well, hello and good morning. Going to get our Access to Capital panel started here. And I'm David Margrave. I currently serve as the chair of the State of Texas Product Development and Small Business Incubator Fund, and looking forward to our discussion. Want to start by thanking the Governor's Office and all of the forum partners and sponsors for bringing this program together. We've got an excellent panel for you this morning on the topic of access to capital. Ed White with Texas Heritage Bank, Jonathan Ceribia with Lift Fund, Sonia Troshi with Wood Forest National Bank, and Annie Hudspeth with the U.S. Small Business Administration. And I'm going to start by briefly introducing everyone, but the way I'm going to do it, because I think it's more understandable for all of you, is I'm going to introduce each individual and then ask them just to give us a little quick overview of what their organization does, and in particular, key ways that their organization can help bring access to capital to small businesses. And so I'm going to go to the end, Annie, and start with you, and do a brief intro of Annie Hudspeth. Annie Hudspeth has been with the U.S. Small Business Administration, SBA, for over 24 years. Annie is currently a lender relations specialist with the SBA San Antonio District Office. She works to provide technical assistance and training to SBA lenders, resource partners, as well as promoting SBA loan programs and resources to entrepreneurs. Her experience includes providing assistance on export loans, microloans, SBA 7A loans, and SBA 504 loans. She's currently a lender relations specialist, and through that she holds multiple positions. She's the San Antonio District International Trade Officer, educating lenders and the public on export loan opportunities. She's the district office technical representative for the Women Business Centers located in San Antonio, as well as the San Antonio District Office brand manager. Annie also strongly advocates on assisting entrepreneurs realize their dreams. So Annie, I'll start with you, and just give us a brief takeaway in terms of what are the things that SBA does in terms of key ways that SBA can help organizations access capital.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. So the SBA, what we do, we've been around since 1953, and how many of you have heard of the SBA before? Okay, good. Well, our new current administrator we used to be called the best kept secret, and we're trying to change that. So I'm so thankful that the Governor's Office included us to be here today. What the SBA does is we have several different ways. We help individuals start their business through our resource partner network. We have the SCORE, we have the Small Business Development Center, we have the Women's Business Centers, and then we also have the Veterans Business Opportunity Center, the VBOC centers. We also help individuals grow your business by our federal contracting opportunities, and so that you can get in and do business with the government. We have Sheena Little over here that's an expert on that. She can help you. We do have a table here, an exhibit table here in the back that can provide you with more detailed information. And then we also help you expand your business, and we do that through the education, the training. We have online training classes as well. We also have our access to capital. We have different loan programs that we have available. We have the 7A, the 504. We have Community Advantage, micro lenders. We also have the SBIC and SBIR opportunities as well for your funding opportunities. And then our last thing that we do is we help individuals recover. So we have our disaster loan programs that can also assist with that.
Great, thank you. And now I'm going to come back down to this end of the table and introduce Ed White. Ed's a native of San Antonio. He's a commercial banker with over 30 years experience serving in various leadership roles. He currently serves as Senior Vice President in Commercial Lending for Texas Heritage Bank. He's an alumnus of Leadership San Antonio and was recognized by the San Antonio Business Journal in the inaugural 40 Under 40 recognition. He's also a former chairman of the Alamo City Black Chamber of Commerce. And Ed, it may sound like an obvious question in terms of how does a bank help provide access to capital. So as part of your overview, maybe tell us how your organization differentiates itself from others.
All right, thank you, David. Texas Heritage Bank is a community bank, a privately held bank. It's been in existence for over 100 years. It's based in Boerne, Texas, but we also have an office in San Antonio, Leon Springs. We're about a $150 million asset bank. When I say privately held, so we're not publicly traded. You can't look us up on the stock exchange and say, what is the stock price for Texas Heritage Bank? There's only 2 shareholders. And one of the shareholders is actually the CEO of the bank, and then we also have another shareholder that is a professor at Abilene Christian University. And so one of the differences between Texas Heritage Bank and any other bank is basically how close we are to being a small business. I mean, we're a small business as well when you're considering the competitive landscapes of banks. I've worked for much larger banks, but the community bank the name is actually definitely very appropriate because the individuals that work in the community bank are literally right here in the community. The CEO of the bank is actually a resident of San Antonio or Boerne or the greater San Antonio area. I'm that as well. And so we have an intimate relationship with the community. We know the community very well. When you're dealing with someone in the community bank, if you're dealing with a commercial lending officer like myself, you're dealing with someone that is involved in the decision-making process, which is a great asset for any business owner. Because we're not just gathering the information and then sending it off to another place to make a decision for us, and then we communicate that. No, we're actually actively involved in the decision-making process.
Great, thank you. Now I'd like to introduce Sonia Troshi. And Sonia is Community Development Relationship Manager with Wood Forest National Bank for the Austin, Round Rock, Brownsville, Harlingen, Gillespie County, and San Antonio, New Braunfels areas. Sonia is responsible for helping improve the quality of life for underserved individuals and families by the identification, development, and implementation of community development strategies. She has 17 years of experience in the nonprofit sector, and she puts her deep knowledge in the low and moderate income communities in terms of the work she's able to provide. Prior to joining Wood Forest, Sonia was the Texas Regional Director at the National Council of La Raza, the largest national Hispanic civil rights and advocacy organization in the U.S. And Sonia, similar to Ed, tell us a little bit about Wood Forest, but also tell us how Wood Forest differentiates itself.
Well, absolutely. Well, thank you everyone for being here. I'm really excited to be part of this panel. So a little bit about Wood Forest. So in 1980, a very smart and visionary man by the name of Robert Marley founded Wood Forest with the vision that we would be a community partner. So Wood Forest is also a community bank. We are also privately held, with the 51% actually being shareholders being the employees. So as an employee of the bank, and as many of our team members will tell you, we feel like this is our business, which is one of the reasons why we are so committed to community work. We are currently in 17 states with nearly 800 branches across those states. We, as I mentioned, were founded in the Woodlands. Here in San Antonio, we have about 12 branches. And one of the things that we take great pride in, we are open 7 days a week. We are a full-service bank, so we look at things like credit and financial services and consumer and business products. Now, what makes us different from many of our banks is that we not only look at the financial products but how do we establish a relationship with the community, with entrepreneurs, and not only provide lending and capital, but how do we help with training, with support, with mentorship? So we do a lot of work in the community, partnering with organizations like TAC, like the Chambers, other organizations like different CDFIs that are in the room today, like BCL, Lift Fund, and others, to ensure that if we're not able to help you, we don't just say no. We direct you to some of our other community partners and ensure that you are successful in your business journey.
That's very, very helpful. And our fourth panelist is Jonathan Sarabia. Jonathan has been a business development officer with Lift Fund since May of 2015. Prior to joining Lift Fund, Jonathan had over 10 years experience in the banking industry, primarily in lending. Through his work at Lift Fund, Jonathan has helped many business owners with business loans and technical assistance, and he's represented Lift Fund at multiple events and expositions. Jonathan is committed to community involvement and volunteer work. His most recent volunteer service was with the Texas Workforce Commission at the Bexar County Detention Center, where he mentored incarcerated veterans on entrepreneurship. Jonathan, and tell us a little bit about Lift Fund.
Thank you, David. So what Lift Fund is we are a not-for-profit organization that helps businesses with access to capital through loans when it's not available through traditional means. So we partner with banks that aren't able to provide those loans, and we can provide that. We like to consider ourselves a stepping stone. So we provide education, technical assistance, as well as those loans. Our loans can range as little as $500 up to $500,000 on our CDFI side. And then we also have a SBA 504 program that can go up to $5.5 million. In addition to that, we have our Launch SA here in San Antonio at the Central Library. It's a resource center for entrepreneurs. And we have our Women's Business Center, which we also partner with SBA on. And that provides one-on-one business advising as well as a variety of workshops.
Great. So as you can see, we've got some really great perspectives for this discussion on access to capital, a lot of different experiences and a lot of different ways that capital can be provided. So I'm going to start with a couple questions from our panel, and then sort of in the middle of things, I'm going to stop and see if there are any questions, because I want to, if there is a particular area that the group is interested in, I want to tailor some of the remarks by our panelists to that. So first question for our panel, and I think this is one it can be helpful to hear everyone's input on, but what would you say are two best practices entrepreneurs should consider when seeking capital? So start with you, Ed.
Great question, and to most of you out there, it's probably going to be a very obvious answer. One is be prepared. Two is do the business plan. And three, you become the expert of your industry so you can communicate that expertise to your banker. Don't expect the banker to be the expert in your industry. Don't expect the banker to be the expert in how you want to run your business. And so knowing that is really paramount in the initial step of access to capital. Know your exit strategy. Yes, know your exit strategy at the beginning. Do you want to transition this company to your sons, daughters, next generation, or is this something you want to run for several years and sell? Tell your exit strategy as a part of your plan. So be prepared, do a business plan, know your exit strategy, and be an expert in your own industry.
Jonathan, what would you say in terms of key best practices?
I'm gonna feed off of Ed here. Be prepared is very key. So know how much you're gonna need, your project cost, know your industry. So experience in the industry, you do your homework, make sure you have that business plan lined up, and know your personal finances as well as your personal credit, because most institutions, we're going to require a personal guarantee. So know what's on your credit, know your budgets, and also know your projections, because we want to see if you know what the business is going to be doing.
Sonia?
So I think all of what my colleagues here have mentioned are very important. But even before that, I would say get to know your banker. Have a really good relationship with someone within a financial institution, because they are going to be your biggest advocate when you are seeking that capital. The second thing, and this goes back to just being prepared, really know your business and really have everything in order before coming to a bank, whether that's having your financial statements, your marketing plan, your business plan. Really know the direction of where you're going in your business.
Annie?
I will echo what my previous panel has mentioned as well. But what we always say is when you don't need money, it's the time to be prepared to get money in the future. So definitely reach out to one of our resource partners. As I mentioned, we have several of those that can help you with your business plan. We called that the roadmap for success. So it can help you know where you are and where you want to be. And then also to include the exit plan and your financial plan. As Jonathan mentioned, know exactly how much money you're looking to borrow and what you're needing it for. But also, more importantly, before you go and do that, you also want to look at your credit report. As Jonathan mentioned, both your personal and your business will be looked at. So you can go into annualcreditreport.com and pull from the credit resources that are out there. You can pull it for free, know what's on it. So those questions might be asked if you have something on your credit report, so know what's on it so that you're not surprised and the lender's not surprised. And just as everyone mentions, just be prepared. The most important thing when you go into a financial institution is to be prepared, to know exactly what you want, broken down what you're needing it for, your credit report, what's in it, how you can overcome those obstacles if there's anything listed on it, and then just be prepared with your business plan, your projections, those sorts of things.
That's great, thank you. And let me follow up with a couple drill down questions on what the panel's comments were. So if I'm a small business owner and I'm not really practiced in going in asking for additional capital, are there resources where I can go and have a dry run, so to speak? So it's not the real deal, but to practice and get some good, sometimes maybe constructive, but things you don't want to hear feedback in terms of, you need to work on this, so that you don't go in and learn those things the hard way by someone you're actually asking for the money.
Start with me again?
Sure, or whoever has a thought on that.
All right. No, that is a great thing to do. So I guess a good example would be, since a lot of capital initially is between family, what we call FF&A, family, friends, and associates, do a dry run with someone in your family. Say, hey, if you were the bank, would you make this loan? Or let them read your business plan. Another example, a great example, and it comes on, I don't watch it as often anymore, but if you watch Shark Tank, that's a good way to see how an entrepreneurial thinks. And what I would say there, that's patient money, because that is someone saying they want to invest directly into your business. A bank does not directly invest and we become an owner or a partner in your business. When you sell your business, you don't pay any money toward the bank as far as, hey, this is your equity stake. So on Shark Tank, they're asked typically 3 questions. If you are wanting $100,000 and you're willing to give 10% equity, they'll say, well, that means you're valuing the company at $1 million. And then they'll say, okay, well, tell me about your sales. And if you haven't sold anything yet, and they won't typically say, no, I don't want 10% into your company, So they'll ask that, and then they'll also talk about your strategy a little bit. So direct answer to your dry run, test it with families, your family members. If you happen to have a CPA, a financial advisor, or even a banker in your family, hey, run it by him or her. And then if maybe a last resort, look at Shark Tank and listen to the questions that are asked of those entrepreneurs who want to receive money from one of the sharks.
Any other thoughts? And it doesn't have to be everyone, just anything people would add?
David, I'm glad you asked that, because at Lift Fund, we actually have our Women's Business Center where we have business advisors that can help you prepare to access capital, whether it's through Lift Fund or through a bank or through another lender. So what they can do is they can meet with you, and it's free of charge. So they can meet with you on a one-on-one consultation, and they can either help you with a business plan, or they might even do a soft pull of your credit so you can know what's on your credit and give you some advice on that. So I highly recommend our Women's Business Center for preparation, or the Small Business Development Center as well, located at UTSA. Their business advisors can also do similar activities with you.
So one of the things that I would recommend, and again, this is one of the things that Woodforest National Bank does that distinguishes it, right, in the community, is that our bankers are actually prepared to sit with you one-on-one without any commitment, and help you review those documents, like help you review your business plan, and also just share with you what are the things that we're going to be looking at if you were to apply for a loan. So just having, again, that relationship and being able to have that communication. The other thing is there are many resources here locally, including the Maestro Entrepreneurship Center, the Women Business Center, right, the Small Business Development Center at the University of Texas San Antonio. So think of all those. And then the other thing that we traditionally don't think about, if you are a member of any chamber here, you're likely to have peers that have been through this process. Use your peer network to help you with that as well. So those would be the things that I would say that can definitely help you get you on the right track.
And I just go back to all of our resource partners, the resource partner network that I mentioned at the very beginning. We have our SCORE, we have the small business development centers, and we also have the women's business centers and VBOC. All of them, we like to call them the American Idol judges, right? When you go in there thinking you have the best product, they'll be the ones to tell you, you know what, this is not the best product for you, or maybe you need to look at something different, or maybe need a little bit more time. I think that would always be the first place I would recommend that you start. And then also one thing I wanted to follow up on, I forgot to mention that most lenders are going to want some skin in the game. So you're also going to have some capital to put down, maybe as little as 10%, but it can also go up to 33%. So that's something else that you'll also have to think of as well.
That's great. That's great feedback. And one of the things that was mentioned in this discussion is the idea of the individual and the team. And I really don't think I've ever seen an investment transaction. Ideas, product, they're very important. Business history is very important. But ultimately, people are going to invest in the individual and the team. And so that's huge in terms of getting success, in terms of accessing capital. And really think about that, because they're making a bet on the team. One other quick follow-up I think it could be interesting for the audience is it easier to get a loan for a particular kind of use of proceeds? So say I'm coming in on a loan to grow a new product line, I already have an existing product, versus another kind of loan. Are there certain kind of loans that are easier to get based on the use of proceeds?
All right, David, that's a dangerous question, really. I mean, before I answer that question, let me just add, there is another resource network organization that I think most of us know about, but in case you don't, the UTSA Institute of Economic Development is a great place to do that dry run with, because that's what they're there for. They can help in the proposal creation or business plan creation. So if you haven't visited with someone with UTSA Institute of Economic Development, that would be also a great source. So to answer your question, I really don't think there's one easier than the other, because I think the danger is if you say one thing, there's always something that is unique about every transaction. And so in my 30 years of experience, I have done startup financing, and to Annie's credit, yes, equity is important in that. If you want to try something that is, just go to a franchise seminar. That's a great way to learn about how a successful franchise is run and the training and the process that you have to go through in order to be selected to be a franchisee. I mean, so I think some people will say real estate is always a easier product to deal with because on a collateral standpoint, you have a fallback, or a bank has a fallback position and an asset that is typically appreciates in value. So that may be, if I was gonna, if you had a gun to my head, I guess I would answer real estate.
Okay, yeah.
But
Easier to
but
say.
everything still has a very unique aspect to it.
Okay. And any other particular thoughts on that? We don't need to linger on it if there aren't any strong thoughts.
I think the one thing I hear from most individuals is startup businesses. Anything under 2 years is probably the hardest to get funding for, or more challenging. It's not impossible. We do have community lenders, and we have the nonprofit private lenders as Lift Fund, and then People Fund. We do have a couple of those community lenders, credit unions, that might be able to push those loans through a little bit easier than a bigger bank. Some of the bigger banks want to see at least 2 to 3 years of sales prior to. So if you fall in the category of under 2 years, you might want to reach out to your community and credit union and the private lending such as Lift Fund and People Fund.
Excellent point.
And I'm going to agree with Ed. There's not an easy answer for what may be easier what type of lending it might be easier. I will say that if there's a SBA loan, there is some leeway there because we have an SBA guarantee. So that gives some leeway to the lender because they have a guarantee from the Small Business Administration that allows us to have some flexibility there in the guidelines. So it's not necessarily easier, but it does give us a little bit of advantage to take a little bit more risk when we have an SBA guarantee.
Yeah, and just in addition to that, the one thing, again, to consider, and this was already mentioned, is when, especially with startups, which we tend to agree that that's probably the more difficult types of businesses to lend to, but it's then about your personal credit, right? And so what do you bring to the table? What's the collateral? So it's making sure that you have skin in the game, but also taking consideration that your personal credit will then be taken into account as well.
Okay, great, thanks. And let's pivot from that and really want to reach out to all of you. And how would you like to direct this panel in terms of what are some things that you think you're wanting to know more about, you want more details on? Who has questions along those lines? Have we got a mic for? We'll listen. We'll listen well.
Okay, can you hear me pretty good?
Yeah, yeah.
So I'm Stacey Bean, and I'm the owner of Techration. It's an IT consulting company. I'm also a veteran, and I've been in the process of really just getting myself started within this last quarter, even. So net new, below 2 years. I'm not at the point where I need funding now, but I heard someone say, get it when you don't need it. I anticipate in the months to come being able to secure some type of government opportunity, right? In fact, I see some that I think are pretty good, and hopefully I'll be able to solidify those opportunities. Now, given the long lead time to do business with the government, and given the fact that I don't need the money now, but I'm anticipating it, what would be the best course of action and the best steps now for me to take to try to secure that funding in anticipation of what I believe will come in a very short amount of time?
Great. What do people think?
And I'm just going to quickly mention, we have a revolving line of credit or a line of credit. Since you're not quite sure what you're going to need now, you might request a line of credit for your business for those future projects that you might be looking to bid on or to obtain. So I would think maybe a line of credit up front would be something that you might consider looking into.
Other thoughts?
Yeah, I'm gonna agree. A line of credit or maybe even a business credit card, just for now, because you don't need the funds specifically right now. It sounds like it's a government contract type thing you're seeking. Okay, great. So a line of credit or something revolving is going to be your best plan of action right now. So that way you don't take out the money until you actually need it.
Great. Yes.
With a company that banks don't like in the payment processing, ATM, like those kinds of businesses that either handle cash or they might even consider almost a competitor, or like a new payment technology that's for the unbanked or underbanked population that we've developed. I've sat with tons of bankers, small community banks, and they just, we have assets, we have millions of dollars in revenue, they just don't want to loan to us. So how would you work around that hurdle to be able to get financing to be able to manufacture equipment if they're not wanting to work with a specific type of business?
Well, I'll say at Lift Fund, so we're kind of industry agnostic. We'll lend to any industry with the exception of real estate investments, just anything speculative in nature. Now, as long as the funds aren't going to lend, so if you're not lending the funds out, that's something that we would consider. Our products are term loans, so if it's, if you're looking for a term loan, we can look at something like that.
Yeah.
Other questions?
Well, I will just add to what Jonathan stated. Money services businesses, unfortunately, from a bank standpoint, they're a part of a special regulation that banks have to go through a certain process with money services businesses. You probably are aware of that, and that is what makes it a little bit more challenging for bankers to do a traditional lending structure for those type businesses.
We've probably got about 5 more minutes. Let me ask a couple quick questions to the panel, and then we could probably take 1 or 2 questions after that, and then we'll wrap it up. So let me switch things around on the panel a little bit. All of you really, I think most of your focus is on lending sorts of funding, but what has your experience been in terms of growing businesses, blending funds obtained through loans with equity investments, money from angels? What would be some of your thoughts and takeaways to folks from that?
So let me tell you a little bit about Woodforest's strategic initiatives around entrepreneurship. So we understand that there is this need for capital. And so what we've developed is a strategy that looks at how do we provide capital to the CDFIs, organizations like Lift Fund. How do we provide capital and investments to SBICs that are looking, right, for that next step of the growth? And then how do we not only use those type of investments and then our lending products to really meet the needs of our community members, but then look at what type of technical support can we also assist with. So we really look at the entire picture in terms of access to capital at the local level, then working through many of our local partners like the CDFIs, and then several of our national organizations. And that includes organizations like OFN, who is also an organization that provides capital to the local CDFIs to be able to distribute to those that we are not able, or to lend to those that we're not able to lend. And as I mentioned, then there comes that piece of providing that technical assistance, because one of the things that we find in the research is many people aren't always prepared to receive loans, right, or receive capital, or we don't want people to go into more debt or struggle financially because they weren't necessarily prepared for a loan. So we make sure that we're also building that capacity and that training, and that's kind of how Woodforest is actually working. And one of those examples is what we've done at the Maestro Entrepreneurship Center, where we are working with a local nonprofit organization to build the capacity of entrepreneurs and help them accelerate their businesses.
Thanks.
Through the SBA, we have the SBIC program, which is for investment companies. We also have an SBIR is for research companies as well on our website. Some of the other things that we partner with are crowdfunding. They have equity financing as well. So there's some opportunities in raising money that way as well.
Excellent. And on this topic, I think it's demonstrated by this program. The state of Texas is very committed to seeing small businesses grow and succeed, and Texas has some great programs in place that can help small businesses. There's more information on the website, gov.texas.gov/business, and through the Texas Economic Development and Tourism Office. One of the programs the state has is the Product Development and Small Business Incubator Fund. These are loans for small businesses or companies that are looking to advance products in the state of Texas, and there are other programs out there. So I think in addition to pure loans, I'll also look for other opportunities to supplement that with other ways of accessing capital. What other questions does anyone have for us? We probably have time for a couple. It's gov.texas.gov/business.
We're going to get this question. Let me ask something in particular. We're addressing African American businesses here today, and so money is green, business is business, but anything in particular that you can share with the audience as relates to an African American business, a small business, and access to capital? Anything, any trends, anything that's happening along those lines?
I guess in a sense, like I said, I've done it. I've actually worked with several African-American entrepreneurs, and some of them are in this room. All the things that we've stated, I think, before in the course of the questions and answers, all the resources that are available are accessible for anyone, and I would just say you use them. You know, everything that we've stated, I think, is color neutral or race neutral. So.
Yeah, so recently there was a research that was published by the by AEO, the American Entrepreneurship Opportunity Association, the Association of Entrepreneurship Enterprise Opportunity. And one of the things that they mentioned on African American business is the potential for growth and the impact that it has in the communities, because of the fact that they hire local and they tend to hire within their community, right? Really helping to spur economic development. Now, the challenges that it presented were, the major two challenges were, one, a trust factor in terms of just African-American entrepreneurs not necessarily having that trust of the financial systems, right, to look out after the best interests. So that's where one of the things that I would say is we really need to do a better job as financial institutions and organizations reaching out to the community, right, and building that trust and those relationships. The second thing that it talked about was credit. And so one of the things that it mentioned is how we're not doing enough in creating that knowledge base of how the personal credit impacts the business credit, right? And so how do we prepare at early stages to ensure that our community members have the credit when they're looking to start their businesses, right? Or at least look at the credit restoration programs and getting them into a way that they're going to be bankable. The other thing was the lack of knowledge and information and resources in the community. And that goes back to how are we promoting organizations like Lift Fund, BCL, People Fund, and others that are able to provide some of this other access to capital when they're either underbanked or unbankable, right? To get them into that step so that they can then access the capital once they graduate from those programs.
Great. And maybe have time for one more question, and then I think we'll wrap it up.
Thank you. The one fact we know about getting a loan is it has to be paid back. And I just wondered, from all of your experience, what precaution would you suggest? What's the main or the top reasons that people fail to pay their loans back? Is there a trend, or are there reasons that you could share with us why they don't pay the loan back or their business fails?
The one thing that comes to mind when you ask that question is, have you heard all of us say at the very beginning, what makes you successful is to be prepared? I think that's one of the biggest causes for failure, is that most startups are not prepared. They're not prepared for all of the things that come with owning your own business. So I think that would be one of the reasons I would think would be that you're not prepared. You don't have enough cash, capital, all those kinds of things. You're just not prepared to start your business.
Adding to Annie's response, I would say competition, not really understanding the competition in your industry and that landscape. And then secondly would be, we talk about a business plan initially, but that is something you really should be using internally in your business ongoing, so you can do your own SWOT analysis, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats to your own business. So it's an ongoing thing. Your business is a very dynamic thing. It changes from time to time based upon what's happening. And so competition and always updating your business plan is a way to avoid not being able to pay it back.
And conditions, the correct conditions.
Last thing, I would say the financial statements. It's amazing how many folks wait until the end of the year to really understand how their business is performing. So it's really monitoring your cash flow, monitoring, your P&L, your profit and loss statements. You need to know how your business is doing regularly, not just on a quarterly basis or at the end of the year.
I would really add to that and reinforce that. I think managing your cash flow and working capital needs is huge, and particularly the individual mentioned government funding or other types of funding that are providing you revenue could get drawn out. And if you haven't really thought through, how am I going to manage my cash flow needs if things aren't exactly as I hope, that's where you can get trapped, and that can sometimes result in not being able to pay back a loan.
I would also add, don't be afraid to raise your hand and go to the banker and say, hey, this is what I'm experiencing right now. I'm concerned about it. What options are there? The last thing a banker wants to deal with is a total big surprise and say, oh, I'm closing my office tomorrow. Here, I give up. So don't be afraid to give the banker bad news and just say, hey, I'm having some struggles. Tell me what we can do.
And don't be afraid to ask for money when you need it. So if you're getting into a situation where cash flow is getting pretty thin, or it's going to be, it comes back to the preparation part. Be prepared for that, because there are going to be ups and downs in your cash flow. Talk to your banker, have a relationship with them, so you can pick up that phone and say, hey, I need some extra money now before yesterday. Usually we get the phone call when you needed money yesterday. It's very difficult for a banker or a lender in general to lend money the next day. And stay away from these fast money, expensive money. So a lot of online lenders, they can lend to you within 24 hours, but also look at the cost of that. It's usually going to cost you a lot of money, and it's going to hurt your cash flow.
Those are great points. I think time-wise we need to wrap things up. I'm getting the nod that we do, and I think encourage people to come up to our panelists and ask them follow-up questions. Thank you very much. This has been a great discussion. We've had a great panel. If we can give a round of applause for our panelists, thank you. And thank all of you.